Again, moving on, we're going to shift positions. I'm going to ask our model to lay down with her head to this way and the feet here. And come on down this way if I may ask. Good. Now, the next point is about the thickening and the thinning of blood. There's an interesting story about the thickening of blood. Why would you want to do that? Well, if you had a cut or a wound or a break, you'd sure want to stop the bleeding, and you can do it this way. In the book called God Helps Those Who Help Themselves, there's a real interesting story. A fellow was just ready to go off to the Vietnam War, and he stopped into Hanna's store and said, just wanted to say goodbye, I'm going off to the war. And she said, well, what are you going to do? And he says, I'm in the medical corps. And she said, don't forget how to stop bleeding. He stopped in his tracks and came back and said, would you mind telling me that again? So here's what Hanna told him. First of all, you lift the knees up so that the feet are flat against the surface while the person's laying down. Now I'm going to come around to this side. I've changed positions to the right side of the model. To thicken a blood, you always stand on the right side of whomever you're working on. You're going to use the polarity in your hands for this. So I'm going to kneel down so I'm about the right level. The right hand I'm going to place here, not touching the bottom, but simply radiating the bottom. And the left hand I'm going to put above the head, again, not touching the head, simply radiating. And you hold this position, and as you hold this position, it thickens the blood. Literally, you know how long to do this one because the bleeding will stop. So I'm just holding this. Now, I'm not going to do this long with our model because her blood will become too thick for doing it. But again, the position is the right hand near the bottom, not touching. The left hand right over the top of the head, not touching. No other position is needed. This is a very, very effective way in accidents, in something that you don't know what to do, but you need to stop the bleeding. The story that we get from Vietnam is that same fella came back after he spent 2.5 years in Vietnam, and he came back to thank Hanna. And the reason he came back to thank Hanna is he said, I taught all the other medics how to use this on the battlefield. And there are hundreds of servicemen who owe their life to just this knowledge. Because on the battlefield, either the medic did it or one of the other wounded GIs. They would hold this position and they could stop the bleeding of the person on the field. It's a very valuable point to know. Now, the next part is about thinning the blood. And again, you use this position, but you come to the person's left side. Now, why would you use thinning the blood? First of all, I've said we're filming this in the Colorado Rockies. We are a mile high here. So those of you from the flatlands, as we call it, or from the coast, are not used to this altitude because your blood is too thick. If you were to bend down with your knees, and if you've ever come up and felt sort of dizzy in the head, it is because your blood is too thick. So the way you thin the blood is exactly what we did for thickening the blood from the opposite side. One hand, now you're on the left-hand side of the person, so your left hand goes to radiate to the bottom. The right hand goes to radiate to the top of the head. And this is how you'll thin the blood. You don't have an indicator about bleeding stopping with this one, but the person will sort of get a sense when that's enough, or you'll get a sense when that's enough. In the absence of a sense, please don't do this more than 3 minutes. And then get up and test. The best way to test is to lean down, bend at the knees, and then get up suddenly. And if you're still getting dizzy, do this a little bit longer.